CTE. Thank you. It's been a bad and a long day, so I'm ready to pull skins off. Okay. Welcome everyone. Let me start all over. Welcome everyone to the PDC. I'm gonna step away.
Hi everyone. My name's Gretchen Reyes. That's Tuan.
Who's messing up?
Want to introduce yourself?
All right, everybody, get into the
Hey
camera.
everybody, I'm Christina Hansen. I'm the instructional designer for CTE.
Hi, my name is Tuan. I am also the faculty coordinator for the CTE. I got it right this time. And also a math professor here at Triton College.
That was good.
I know, I had to step away.
So if you are virtual, this is really a hands-on type workshop. So what we need you to get out is a syllabus and your course outline. That is what we need for you to get. And we will be opening the floor for everybody to work on their course, and you will be able to ask questions through, I guess, virtually, and then we'll be helping the people who are in the room.
Along with the course outline and also your syllabus, we want to look at, and thank you, Gretchen, we want to look at, I'm on camera.
I know. It's going to video tweet everything.
I know, let me step away again.
Okay, now you can see the
We want you to think about when designing for your 8 weeks for all of you, we want you to look at how much topics and material you have within your 16 weeks. And we want you to relate it to the course objectives that you have for your course. So for example, in mathematics, we may have a total of 5 course objectives, but it also depends on the course. We want to look at that material and see how it relates to the course objectives so we can design the 8 weeks based on that. Another example in this case would be using my Math 102. I'm using my Math 102 class. In the class, we have a total of 3 projects that we have to do. So in the instructions, what I'll do is relate one of the 3 projects to one of the course objectives so that we can talk about it during the class, and also the material that they were going over. So that'd be like outside material. So for example, like statistics, maybe give them a chapter or 2 within the textbook to read, to have an association to the course objective and also to the project that is going to be required for my students to do. So in that, we are here as a collective group, Gretchen, Tina, and I are here to answer any questions that you may have. But as Gretchen stated before, we would like for you to, A, have your course objective, and B, your syllabi. It makes it easier to do the interactive collaboration in this case so that we can answer questions. Now, for all of you in virtual land, we do not see your screen and we do not see your course objective. So therefore, you're going to have to give us an idea of the course objective that you're referring to, because not everyone has the same one. And also give us an idea of the material or the topics that you have within the 16 weeks that will relate to it so that we can help you with that.
Very good. Yes. And like what Tuan was saying, so I've developed several 8-week courses from a 16-week course. And the reason that you need your actual outline is because you'll have those topicals objectives that you have. And one of the things that I noticed was when I went through my topicals was there were several different times throughout the 16 weeks that maybe we are touching on the same subject. So I was able to intentionally say, okay, well, I'm going to take this part, the 3 parts, and bring them into 1 week, 1 module, and teach them for 1 week versus stretching it out through that whole entire 16 weeks. And when it comes to projects or papers, things like that, being able to take them and build upon them throughout that 8 weeks as well. So that maybe if you had 5 different projects, you're really intentionally looking at those projects and saying, hey, can I do part of the project week 1 and then build on that in week 2 and build on that in week 3, and therefore you're hitting those course objectives that you're looking for. Because again, the whole purpose of coming from a 16-week to an 8-week is just to make sure that you are creating a course that flows, that makes logical sense, and also is hitting those course objectives.
But also keeping our students engaged too.
Very engaged.
Very engaged. But I do like the idea that you stated, that having a course project and building on the next one. I like that. I like that.
I like to do it. My students like it too.
I think so.
Yeah.
I like my students do too.
I did, yeah. I just side note, I just got course evaluations back for my 8 weeks that are finishing this week, and that was one of the things that my students had said, is that they liked the fact that the projects were built upon each other, and that within that I had done a part of a group, but then I also had done individual, and then I had gone back to group, and they really enjoyed that part. So there was a lot of interaction and a lot more peer-to-peer learning than just, you know, standing up and just trying to hit those topicals every time and not really intentionally looking at those course objectives.
Very good. I do like that. I mean, because it is true for everyone. A lot of students, especially in my class, a lot of students were complaining in the beginning they would do a project, for example, and didn't know it related to the course objectives, but then I went back and reevaluated and showed them exactly how they're linked to each other. So for example, in the project 1 that my Math 102 class is doing, it's about statistics, but it's linked to chapter 2, which we were talking about set theory. And it's also going to be linked to the future chapters, which is going to be consumer mathematics, which is linked to also logic.
Exactly. And for those of you who have not built with the new navigation that came out in the last year, what you'll see in that new navigation now is an actual section for objectives and like what that module is going to cover. And one of the things that I do in my modules is I explain to them why they're doing what they're doing so that they understand that this is going into that course objective. So I think if you don't have the new format of the navigation, you can ask Humberto for it and he'll send it over to you. But it also makes your class flow a lot more logical than the old navigation that we used to have. Do you have anything I'd like to add? Sorry. I feel like we're like having our little conversation here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure, so I'll just do this.
So for those that are in the room, did you guys bring a syllabus?
Most of us are administrators. Yeah.
Most of you administrators. Nothing wrong with being an administrator. We welcome.
Yes.
We'll give you a hug later. Thank you. Thank you. No questions, huh?
Okay. Anybody online have any questions?
We have Greg Patino, Jack Taha, Jackie Mullaney, Michael Crenshaw, D. Lanier Anderson.
Well, we have the faculty are online. Maybe there's a faculty member who's got access to a syllabus that they can, or a course outline that they can share, and we can use it as an example.
Greg, Jack, and Jackie.
Does anyone online have a copy or a PDF file that you can share with the audience of your course objectives and then or your syllabus so that we can give an example of how to merge it?
Yes. Anybody wants to volunteer?
Oh, great.
Greg? Does he have access?
Oh.
Hi, Greg.
Hi, Greg.
Hi, everybody. I actually have all of it opened. I have my current course syllabus, and I also have the same course that I taught in an 8-week format for the summer a few years back. So I can share any of the above. And I also have the curriculum, updated curriculum that was done a couple of years ago. So what would you like me to try to share?
I think, and this is me, because you opened the door with your summer class, it's already 8 weeks. Can you show us an example of that 8-week class for the summer compared to the 16-week class so we see maybe the difference in how individuals can actually collaborate that 16 weeks into an 8 weeks?
Okay, I just got to remember how to do this now. How to share my
On
screen.
the right-hand side, down to the little box with the arrow,
Gotcha.
and then click
Share
that, and then you
content.
can, yeah.
Okay, so
He might need to be.
I'm gonna make
to,
a
hold on
Yeah.
1 second, Greg. We're gonna move you to.
got to be a moderator, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
or
Yeah.
presenter. Okay, you're good to go.
We were just going
Sorry,
to have a commercial break.
Noisy
How you
dogs. So, all right. So,
Really wondering what's behind the curtain.
All of his records, I bet. Guitars, records.
All right.
is it easier just to share my screen than to try to pull up files? Okay. Let me go back. So share camera. All right. Can you guys
Sure.
see that or no?
No, you need to share the screen.
We see you.
It says up top, right? Sharing content.
Okay. I've got share application or screen. There we go.
There we go. Oh,
Okay.
it was.
I'm gonna change it to moderator.
Would you have them as?
Gretchen, was there any other feedback from your students?
Had this
I'm
presented.
sure, well, he's taking this.
Okay.
All right.
We got
He
it.
needs to click.
There
the
you
tab.
go.
Okay.
All right.
Yep, it just make it
Right
big
there.
at the top.
All right. This is my summer from a couple of years ago for the same class that I'm actually going to be developing online in the spring. So all the usual stuff that's in the syllabus. And then here's how I broke it down. Can you guys see this okay?
Can you make it bigger? Hit that little, yep. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So this is how I broke it down. Typical summer semester, 8 weeks. But usually what we were doing was covering a chapter a day. The only thing I really have listed in my syllabus is like exams and projects. I don't list week-to-week homework assignments. And I know for
Okay.
my online classes, then I'm more specific. You know, this is due, that is due. The
Yeah, I'm the
face-to-face-
same way, Greg. Yeah.
Yeah, the face-to-face, I like to play it a little fast and loose because sometimes you fall behind or you spend more time on a subject, and I don't want to say you're going to positively have a homework assignment this day when we may have not got to that chapter yet.
Correct. So
Okay.
compared to the 16 weeks, Greg, if I may ask, this is Tuan, by the way.
Okay, here's the 16 week. I don't know if you can see that or if you can still
Yeah,
see the
see
first
it.
one. Okay, so that's the 16 week. This is spring of 2025. Same thing, same idea, chapter by chapter, when the exams are, when the project is due, spring break.
So Greg,
when
when you look at the 8 versus the 16, there's a lot. Is it just a lot more lecture or a lot more hands-on activities? Like when you are creating those two, what are you taking, I guess, out to condense that down where they're still getting the same, content, or how were you intentional in making sure they were getting what they needed? Did you change assignments? Did you create new ones?
What I typically do in the summer is, since we're going to be in class for like 2 hours and 45 minutes a day, twice a week, like the first hour or so of class will just be reviewing the PowerPoint, reviewing the chapter. Then we'll take a break and then we come back and then we start talking about a topic in class, whether or not the students break up into small groups or I just initiate a discussion and we start talking in class about a particular topic. And that's kind of how I take it into the second hour, of the class. That's typically how I do it because I don't want to lecture for 2 hours and 45 minutes and they don't want to hear me talk for 2 hours and 45 minutes. So I kind of, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. I was thinking a follow-up question. When developing your 8-week class compared to the 16-week, are you having students read the material prior to the class during the 8 weeks, or?
They're assigned to read it prior. Whether or not they actually do it is another matter.
Right.
But pretty much what I try to do is just review it when we come back. I don't, especially in an 8-week concept, I tell them on the first day of class, you're going to have to do a lot of work at home because otherwise we're going to spend an awful lot of time just reviewing PowerPoints and we're not going to be able to have any, really good discussions about what this topic is.
Okay, I agree with you. That's the reason why I'm asking, because there's individuals in this case that they're learning and developing their 16 weeks into an 8-week. Sometimes you may have to, everyone, to send out emails and correspondence or announcements to your students to do some work prior to the class, and there are a lot of institutions that do that, for example. And I'm not just talking about graduate level, but I am talking about undergrad. Northwestern University does do the same thing. I took a class there. Prior to the class starting, they have an email, or the instructor, professor, sends out an email to students, read the following material before class, because during class, like Greg is stating, They'll go over a PowerPoint presentation and highlight the most important things that within that chapter or the content of the reading to emphasize. And then in the second half of the course, they have a project or some type of assignment or even some engagement in the classroom to understand the relevance of the material to what the material is being read. And that's what I was saying, because in a 16-week class, you're right, we may go over that material and then send them home to read it. But in an 8-week, we may have to have students, well, you should, and I know, I just said should, but it is hopefully in our optimistic world, that they do some reading prior to the class starting so that they understand how the material is related to today's discussion that they're coming into.
Right. And
When
so, oh, sorry, Greg, go ahead.
I'd say when I was an adjunct at another school before I started here, we had 10-week semesters, and that was kind of what we had to do. You know, day one was all the introductions, and then you let everybody know, okay, you're expected to read chapter 1, and when we come back Wednesday, the first half of the class, we're going to talk about chapter 1. I'm just going to hit the high points, but I'm going to want some questions from you. And we would do that. But that was kind of standard for that school. That's the way they laid it out. That's how they wanted it done. Almost like when you come to class, it's a review and you should have done this work yourself, because we were in 10-week semesters. And, and then we still had projects and homework assignments and group stuff. But it's hard to do if you're not doing the work yourself at home.
Yeah, 100%. And what I was going to say is, so for my 8-week classes, I open them actually a week early and have them do all the things they need to do, syllabus review, and this for online, syllabus review, introduction to each other, things like that, so that on week 1, they're not doing the stuff they normally would have done on week 1, right? They've already introduced themselves, they're already, should have been reading and so forth, and sort of getting a jump on the course prior to starting. And I think that that's really, for these 8-week classes, sort of a change we have to do at Triton, is really get into a groove where everyone's sort of doing the same thing. So it's not a learning curve. If I take, 1 year class at Greg and then take 1 of your classes, Tuan, that they're the same, that I know if I'm taking an 8-week class, this is how it's going to always be. And so we're continually not letting students fall behind, because the work is more intense, is the word I'm going to use.
Right. Well, the school that I'm talking about was one of those for-profit schools where they actually wrote the syllabus for you, and you could not alter that syllabus without permission of your dean. So everybody kind of stuck with it. And I think in that sense, it did make sense for the students that every class you take, no matter who the instructor is, the class is going to kind of flow the same way, just like what you said. Everybody's going to expect the same thing.
Right.
You're right, Greg, because I was one of those individuals as an adjunct at one of those institutions too. The syllabus was already created. The objective was to go in for especially the first day of class for everyone. The first day of class, I was told by my chair, there's no syllabus review. You're starting with the information. So the way the class was set up as a template, we were told that there's a PowerPoint presentation for the chapter. Hopefully students did the reading. We say hopefully. Then in the second half of the class was the interactive activity they had to do. And then the last half of the class was the homework assignment they had to start on in class before leaving the class. That's exactly how it was set up.
Yeah, we did the same thing. Because they were 2.5-hour long classes that met twice a week, or 3-hour long classes for only a 10-week semester.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Thank you, Greg. Thank you. Jackie, would you like to share your syllabus and let's discuss? Thank you again, Greg. Share your syllabus and discuss how you would change that from the 16 weeks into an 8-week course.
You're going to have to give me a little time to get organized then. I have a paper copy in front of me. So, give me a few moments so I could find stuff then to put online.
Not a problem. Let's do an intermission. How's everyone doing?
You have it's also working on 8-week classes, right?
Well, I mean, we've done almost all the classes I teach have been done in the summer at some point in time. So, and there are a handful that, they'd have to have some curriculum changes to just because the times we have. I mean, we're on saying where you meet 2.5 hours. I meet 2.5.
What's
for a
your
summer
what,
class?
what subject?
Engineering technology.
Got it.
Right, like every single class I teach is 5 LNG. So
Yeah.
It's and 3 lab hours to that. I can't assign lab hours at all.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
So
right.
it becomes the summer classes are 5-hour classes at twice a week.
Yeah.
So that's what all of our life would be, and the time to get stuff done, right? The only thing we can take out that misses a learning outcome, and we've tried lots of different ways, is the time, the amount of homework, right? They just have to
Do it.
they're going to have to do 10 hours of homework between the 2 classes.
Now, are any of your courses hybrid?
Nope.
So that might
Because
be.
we can't require them to have a welder at home or a band.
Oh, okay. Well, but that's
and we
for
also
your-
don't have.
but that's for
we
your-
have a policy in our department that there's not textbook stuff. There's stuff that we give them. It's all in our shells and learning stuff like that.
Yeah.
Who doesn't have a welding lab at home?
But is that part of your lab or is that part of your class?
Right, but it's
That's
a
my
2-hour, 2 lecture, 3 lab.
Okay.
So that's some of the lecture is in front of that piece of equipment that people
Sure.
don't have at home.
Right.
Is it possible?
Because it's safety on it as well. Part of it is the how to safely operate.
Yes. Yeah.
That's it's a lot. So a lot of it is just the time they just have to be faster at doing it. So, and it builds on itself. So.
Mm-hmm.
So pardon my ignorance here, is it possible to separate the lecture and lab hours, so you would have all the lecture on one day a week and all the lab on another day a week? Or is that not realistic?
Usage of our current spaces doesn't say that's. I mean, there are certain things we've tried in the how we can possibly have to, because we know other departments do it. Like all the lab for multiple classes would end up in a lab time at the same time,
Gotcha.
and that just space usage of right. We have 6 classrooms and 2 of them are the lab spaces.
Right.
So can't run them at the same time on lecture. Somebody else can use. So it's.
I think
There's a lot in the air on that, which is why we're very selective about what has been in the summer,
Mhm.
and trying to figure out with going to this model, what can run when, it's less about the getting to an 8-week
Sure.
than it is what can physically run against each other based
Right.
on classroom availability and the equipment that's required for those classes.
You open up a wonderful segment for all of us in this case who are looking at your classes, and then we get to yours, Jackie. Thank you. When you're looking at your classes, we have to consider the credit hours as well too, because you're right. Most of us are going from a 3 credit hour, or if it is a 3 credit hour course, you can, without any lab time, you can actually create the 8 weeks. However, if those individuals, like our science colleagues, I need to put hours in there, they have labs as well too. And they have to consider that in the 8-week course. You're right, they have to consider if that's going to be just 1 day of the lab and maybe the other 2 days or 1 day as the lecture part of it. And in the 8-week course for all of you, depending on the number of credit hours that you have assigned to the course itself, maybe that is a factor to consider as well. Because again, going back to Greg and going to that nonprofit institution without mentioning any names, where one of the classes I taught was a 3 credit hour course, it was laid out as 3 credit hours, but we only met 1 day. So everything that we were doing had to meet the objectives of the introduction, the engagement part, and then starting on the homework. So in designing for the summer, I thought the same thing, especially teaching one of my math classes during the summer, when it's a 8-week class or even a 5-week course, how to do that engagement that's part of the class itself, and also meet the objectives for the course. And one of the objective is that they have to do oral and written communication. So that oral communication, for Math 102, is how to do that engagement in the class. They'll meet the requirements in this short period of time, if that makes sense. So, Jackie.
She doesn't have one.
Oh.
She's trying to find something.
Okay. So
Can
the
speak
other,
generally
Oh.
with what I did if you want me to do that.
sure, let's move over.
Would you like me to do that now?
Yes, please.
Sure.
Okay.
The floor is yours, Ms. Jackie.
Okay, let me get so what I guess what I'll talk about is I just, I'm not sure what you wanted me to talk about. I could talk about an 8-week course that I'm looking to put forward, and what I did with that to try to make it into an 8-week course. So let me kind of do that first, I guess. And so one of the courses we're putting forth is the Criminal Justice Capstone course. And it is traditionally taught as a 15-week course. And we are proposing to make it into an 8-week online course. And so what I did was I broke up the weeks into subject matter. So, for example, a capstone course encompasses all the different aspects of the criminal justice program. So 1 week is about criminal law, and another week is about crime theories, and then another week is about police, and then another week is about corrections, and then juvenile justice, and then I have another week where we talk about ethics. Those are kind of the main topics that we highlight in the program. And so kind of how I have it figured out is kind of like what Greg was saying. The first hour is spent just kind of reviewing the materials, going over syllabus, and then, after that, take a break and then come back, and I'm hoping to engage in some type of like small group discussions, have them look at case studies and applying that to the materials. Is this ethical? Is it not? What is the ethical dilemma? If we're talking about police, police and community relations, organization of a police, stresses of police officer, what are some different ways that we can handle these things, excessive use of force, the list goes on. And so the second half of the course, of the night or of the day at the class, I'm looking to do some type of group exercise while I hand out different types of case studies and then have them analyze it and apply the materials that we've been talking about. And then the last week, so the first week is kind of introductions, what the course is about, and then from then on we talk about different topics every week, making sure the course objectives are kind of organized into those different themes as well. And then the last week I have kind of, it's for a capstone course, I have them do a capstone project, which is picking out a topic and analyzing kind of the ethical perspective and coming up with some recommendations, but also presenting their project and also making sure I'm having them do a resume and cover letter and things like that. So that's kind of sort of how I did. Haven't taught it yet, but that's how I'm thinking I'll break it up.
Mm-hmm.
Any feedback is welcome.
And it's good that they say that to kind of elaborate on that. One thing that I have heard from instructors is it's very overwhelming, and they don't want any content to go, to miss, for the students to miss out on,
Right.
So yeah. And one thing I always say is take a look at your 16-week like chapters and write down like 1 or 2 words what the main what is the main idea here, and then see if there's any repeating words that you can kind of group together, and that should help start the condensation process.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to say, Jackie, it seems like you are really intentionally looking at what you want to bring into that classroom to hit your course objective. So I think you're on the right track for that.
I want to compliment you, Jackie, because you
Okay.
Yes, praises to you. You are doing HIPS because you are actually including portfolio in there, which is part of the HIPS, and all of you HIPS is the high impact practices that are used in the classroom. You also infuse some case studies. That's actually really great as well too. And the project and the engagement. You are fusing some of the things I wish you were in my HIPS program to talk about, because that's exactly what you do. And for an 8-week class for all of you, those are very important because they help students stay engaged in the classroom.
Thank you. I'll talk more to you about that then for the ways I can continue to do this. Thank you.
Not a problem. And praises to you. Thank you. All right. I talk just like I do in class. Let me sit down. But I can't sit down. I don't know how to sit down. I can't sit down. I'm always standing.
That's good.
Anyone in our audience, live, not saying you're not live, people out there, we see you, we hear you. Yes. But anyone in our classroom setting, I don't even know what to say.
Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, if it's not reasonable to think this is a workshop right now, hands-on workshop, because we don't have any more syllabi that are available to us, maybe we can share some of the information the people who have taught in 8-week format would like to share with others, or you just got, Gretchen, you said some feedback from your students that.
Yeah, I get it.
Comment
It was like the
authenticated.
same, yeah, because I think I just asked general questions, like what they, had they taken any other 8-week courses before. I would say that one of the other biggest comment they made was how organized it was. How it was super organized. It was easy to follow. They understood what was coming up next. There was no issues in the course at all. There was, and I would say as an 8-week course, there has to be a lot of communication with your students. It's not just like communicating a couple times during the semester or and again, these were online courses, but it is like a constant. I talk to them on Mondays, and sometimes I talk to them on Wednesdays, and I usually talk to them on Fridays, but I'm all constantly conversing with them as well so that they know what's coming up. And even though I have the set due dates, I also like to send those reminders out as well, and I think that if I was to ever teach a face-to-face 8-week course, I don't think it would be much different, like in what I'm currently doing in my online classes.
I think you said that you open up your classes a week earlier, so.
I do, and I would do the same for a face-to-face as well.
And do you modify the message that you give to students when you send them out? I think you were talking about a welcome.
Yeah.
Note that our other folks may not.
Yeah, so I'll stand in front of the camera. And I do this for my face-to-face classes too, and I do it in the summer when it's 8-week classes or 5-week classes, I do it 16-week classes, face-to-face, online, whatever it is. I think sending out a welcome message via video, I always do it video. It's usually from my kitchen table. I'm trying really hard to do it straight from my office now. But I send out a welcome video, and I really try to pinpoint to the students exactly what their expectations are for the course, and also what their expectations are from me, so that they understand that, for an 8-week course, for example, it's not that they're having twice as much work, because I think sometimes we get bogged down with that, because it isn't necessarily that they're getting twice as much work, but the assignments they're going to have are going to be longer assignments. So instead of maybe in my face-to-face class, their homework every week is like, I know it's against the Board of Education, but whatever, but their homework's like 40 minutes, like a week. I give them 2 assignments, each assignment's 20 minutes. They do that because we do a lot of stuff in class. But for my online classes, like I used to build them where they were having like 8 to 10 hours of work per week, and which is what the requirement is. And when I sat back, and that was in a 16-week, but when I sat back to do an 8-week course, I was like, okay, so in my 16-week course, I have all of these assignments they're doing, but in an 8-week course, I'd rather them spend the whole week like working on a case study paper or working on a project than doing 15 little assignments, So again, I think my big word is intentional, really sitting there and, saying that to the students in these welcome messages that I have. Like, you aren't going to have 8 or, 6 or 7 assignments this week that are due like you would have normally had. You might have 3 or 4 assignments that are due, and they're going to just be a little bit longer, but you'll notice in every assignment, so in every single one of my assignments too, and they know this, there is the objective. Why are you doing this assignment? Because with TILT, which is transparency in learning, TILT talks about how students, especially the Gen Z students, they want to know why they're doing what they're doing and that it isn't busy work. And I have found that has also helped with students and understanding that I'm not doing busy work. So those are types of things that I've gotten back from students on my evaluations.
I agree with Gretchen for everyone, because in my 8-week class during the summer, I actually go through a checklist. I do not do a welcome address. I actually do what is called an orientation. That's exactly the email that my students receive. It's an orientation of the class. And within the orientation, it also has a video link, so I actually do two. They get an email, welcome them to the class. I know, I should call it welcome, but I call it orientation. I give them
welcome. Why is an email with them?
because I thought orientation would be a little bit better. And then I asked my students, what did they find?
I might steal it.
I asked my students in regards to the words, and they'd say, oh, they looked at it and they opened it up because they saw orientation of the class. And they thought it was like, oh, it's going to be all happy and joy, which it was. Let me not say it wasn't, but it was. But in the orientation email, it gave them a welcome to the class. It gave them an overview of me. And the video link, when I put it together at home and in front of my computer in my bedroom, I say, yeah, look at my room. And no, can't be at the kitchen table. So we're having a conversation. So in the video, I'm actually having a conversation with them as though I'm sitting in the classroom with them and saying, let's look over the contents of the syllabus. I know that most of you are probably picking it up. I open my class up 4 days before the class gets started so that they can get a chance to go through it. During or before the class, I actually send out another email to say, okay, welcome to the course. The class will be starting on Sunday, to say, for example. If you didn't get a chance to go through it, please sure you do, because there's going to be a lot of exciting things that we're going to be doing in class. And I agree. Until it also said to specify and outline exactly what they're going to be doing. So in the second email, I give them exactly what we're going to be doing in class so that they won't be surprised and that it is not a shocker and saying, oh, he had us read all this. One of the things, for example, for my Math 102 class, they have to do a reading which is called Mathematics and Liberal Arts. That's the first thing they have to do. And in that reading, it tells about why mathematics is important and in the liberal arts math class and how it's being used universally. And I also relate to the four topics that we're going to be talking about, which is statistics, logic, set theory, and consumer mathematics. So I fused that all together so they were like, that's not a surprise that we're going to be learning this and how it relates to them being an adult. And the first day of class, they'll get another email to welcome to the first day of class to remind them the class, where it's located at, and then also on the a video to attach to say, this is me walking to the classroom, don't forget to see me, and then it also has a picture of me and my Blackboard account. So in the class, I tell my students they're going to get at least 3 emails a week just to remind you what's going on. One of my colleagues, in this case, did something wonderful that I would like to do. She actually sends them a text message. I do not ask students for their number, so I think it's a cool idea because most students actually look at their text more than an email. So I'm going to try to do that for the 8 weeks and try to see if it works, because we have to think about we may have students that may not have phones that receive text messages. So I want to make sure I'm universal in the modality that my students receive any information from me. In the class for the first day, I give a structure of the class because they have already done their introductions online. They actually have to do a video, which I got from our colleague, Richard Chan, who actually has his students do a video before the class starts. And they also posted and made comments to it as well, too. So within the 8 weeks of the first week of class, we are looking at the material, so it's not a surprise, but I don't want anything to be left behind. The other thing that I got from my students, especially based on the class, anything that deals with a lot of reading, and we have to consider that most of our students may not do all the reading, and yes, we have to consider that. So I thought about maybe doing a podcast to give them some interaction with that, and I'm going to fuse that in my 8 weeks as well that I learned from. We had an AI presentation here at Triton on
I'm
February
totally going to
28th.
interrupt you. I do in all of my classes.
Cool.
The notebook LM you're going to talk about with the podcast. And that was another thing they said, that they loved the fact that they could go in and they could go have the PowerPoints and the podcast going at the same time. And it was literally covering everything that was in the book chapter. So they were like, that was phenomenal. So sorry to steal your thunder, but I'm doing it and they love it.
I love it as well, too. So it's not stealing, it's borrowing material. And we're collaborating together.
Yes.
I like it. Hold on, hold my hand.
Yes.
There we go. All right. So in this, I know we're having so much fun up here, but I think within our structure for all of us, think about what your students may intentionally need, if you see the word,
Mhm.
also think about the modality, how your students are receiving that information. If it is A, through a text message, if you want to do that, or B, through lots of email communication, because I told my students, you're going to get a lot of email communications from me, because I'm trying to train them to go into Blackboard where the material is located at. Also, in this case, they may receive personal emails, which again goes through Triton. It's just to get that email communication out there to make sure that they're getting. Also, I believe that's very important is that when designing your 8-week classes, we have to think of the students that you're going to have within those courses. Some of us may teach general education classes where we have students who are part of our CAS program. We have to include them in our thinking of designing an 8-week course because that's important. You may have students with special accommodations. You need to include that in your structure of your 8-week class. So if you're going to have elaborate exams or quizzes, make sure you include that in the sense of your thinking. How would I give my student enough time for him, he, or she, or they to go over to CAS to take their exams or any assessments that you have for them? I learned that several semesters ago because I had a student in my summer class and she had accommodations. I had to consider all those accommodations. And with her accommodations, it had to be read out loud. That's done in CAS. She needed extra time. That's done in CAS. And there was one other additional accommodation that I can't remember. But it was all those things that I had to consider in the class where I did short quizzes. And the short quizzes were 10 questions. She needed more time for those. So I had to consider that when designing the class. It was a learning experience, and I appreciated my student for me learning that because the next 8 weeks in the summer, when I taught the class, that's what I incorporated because I had to remember that. Oh, it was visual. She was also had to re-recorded the class. So I was here at Triton. I recorded the class at the same time and posted online for my student with accommodations where it could be read to her as well too. Yeah.
So was your design impacted at all by that practice of giving students immediate feedback on their assessments? Like you give them a test or a quiz, they recommend that we have like 24 hours or so that we take off to grade it and then get it back so they've always got good, consistent, timely feedback?
For me, I would say it was two things. One, it was positive so that I learned how to do that because not every semester is going to be the same and not all the students are going to be the same. It wasn't because I wasn't prepared for it. Because we all, in this case, we design our 8-week classes, we design our courses and design it for 8 weeks. We may not consider everything. So we do a trial and error. You learn the first semester or the first 8 weeks what you didn't know in designing. And for example, like I said, I'm using my CAS student. There was things I didn't know and didn't anticipate it. But as the semester was going with the 8 weeks, I learned how to adjust for my student so that I can learn to do it for the next semester. Then I have students in the class who, I hate to say this, didn't read anything. And I'm like, okay, how can I get my students to read the material? Let me think of something engaging for them to do. So it did give me a learning curve to say, okay, these things are important, but what can I do to increase that learning for the students? How can I do more engagements with the student? Then you get those classes, for example, for everyone, where you have this exciting curriculum that you want to do, and the class is not, your students are not excited. How do you get them engaged? You had this plan that you're going to do this. You learn what to do. So I've learned, in this case, like Gretchen said, I actually took a survey. That was one of their assignments. They had to do a survey, which was called a summary of the class. Mm-hmm. And I learned from that what to change. And I said, every semester is never going to be the same. But as an educator, we learn from our experience. We learn to change and adapt to our students, because if we do not teaching the same way in a 16-week class compared to an 8-week, you may lose your students. You may also have no engagements with your students, and that student, in this case, your enrollment just went down because that student withdrew from the class.
Did you find that there were any assessments that you really couldn't use in an 8-week format if you were going to get timely feedback, like 10-page papers?
For me,
Go ahead.
for me as a math instructor, because it's mainly, and I use my liberal arts math class, everyone. That class actually has writing and mathematics involved in it. So I actually did a verse. And when I say that, 1 or 2 exams in this case would be math computation of it, and then the others would be writing. And then I thought about the writing as well too, and thinking, let me shorten it down. So for example, my students have to do a thread discussion. That's their writing component. They're writing a summary about what they've learned. Whereas the math, I learned that more questions is not the best assessment. So I actually changed it and made it less than 10 questions. But I also learned from my CAS students to keep that down as well too, because again, I have to remember my CAS students may have different accommodations across the board. If I am allowing my students to take more time in the classroom, then my CAS student is going to take an additional to that. So therefore, for my class, for example, if it's an online quiz, they all get the same accommodation. The quiz is open on one day and closes on the last day. They all get the same accommodations, because then I'm also thinking about those individuals, our adult learners, who are coming back and have multiple things. And one of the things I learned from a seminar is called ANDers. ANDers, in this case, for all of you, is individuals who have this and this and this and this. They have all these other things outside their life, outside the classroom. So I'm thinking of all those different things and saying, if I'm giving one student an accommodation, what if I have another one who didn't get the time to do it because he or she or they working, their children, they're doing the homework, but they just lost the time? Then that's why I changed it. I changed it where if the student, in this case, for the 8-week class, they all get the same accommodation. I feel that's equitable because of the fact that I'm thinking of every student in the classroom and not just singling out one. However, I do change it up in the sense that we know that students do not like the same assessments all the time, that it has to be a written. So change it up a little bit, that you are fusing the different types of assessments, but still getting that information about your students in the course material so that you can still make that a great, same word again, assessment and knowledge of what you're doing in the classroom. So again, I use a mixture of both. But I learn from my students, especially with the 8 weeks, what to change up. And like I tell my students, I never use the same material. It's because of the fact that every class is different. Every person is going to be different. Now, the material that I'm talking about, it may be a project that they have to do, or a quiz, or a writing assignment. But the material that they receive for the class itself still follows the objectives for the course. It's just a different way of presenting it because of the students that you have. And 8 weeks are a little bit different than you have in a 16-week course. But you go ahead.
That's fine. A couple of things that you just brought my mind to. So at the end of every week, I have an assessment, like a 10-question, 20-question assessment over what they covered that week, so that they know where they are. It's self-graded. So you take it, self-grades, they know where they stand. I do all my grading on Monday. It's there for hours and hours and hours. I do all my grading for all my classes. Doesn't really matter 8 week, 16 week, or whatever. And they know that that's when they're going to get everything fed back to them. I teach management, human resource classes. Everything's building upon each other. So whether I grade it I grade everything on Monday. They don't need it prior. Like, they don't need that feedback prior to them moving forward, right? Because they're going to get all their stuff Monday night when they're starting that next week. So the way that I do it seems to work really well. What was I going to say? Anders, tests. I totally forgot. You were saying something. It's like, oh, I've got a good point to say. So anyway, but that's how I do my grading. I would say one of the other things I took from Tilt that I also included in my 8-week classes that I try every time I do a new assignment, I try to do it too, is I give examples. I think that that's another thing that's really important. I started changing a lot of my assignments due to AI. Doing self-reflections, giving scenarios, and then having them report back with the self-reflection. Again, the subject I teach, they're all in the working world, so it's sort of easy to give some kind of reflection back. And so that also catches them from doing the AI, because I think that that's one of the things too. Oh, I know what it was. I was a peer reviewer for a lot of years. And one of the things that I never understood, and this is just like my personal thought, and I'm going to just throw it out there, what I never understood was how instructors pre-wrote their announcements each week to their students. I never understood that. I still to this day don't understand that, because on Mondays, after I'm done grading everything, I sit there and I write to them, like the class, here's what I saw, here's what you may want to go back and notice, here's what's coming up this week, here's what's going to be important. And what I would have thought like 3 weeks prior was going to be important, I find out after I graded it wasn't important. And so if I pre-write my announcements to the students, I don't think that's helpful. So that was just my thought, because I do very detailed announcements to my students in those 8-week courses, because they need a lot more information. So I think that that's another thing.
No, you're right. At the not-for-profit institution, Greg agreed to this as well too. One of the requirements that we had to do for the 8 weeks is every week, which was on Tuesday, was a minimum. It had to be done by Tuesday to send out an email to students to give a summary of what you read during their homework assignments. So the same thing.
Yeah.
So we had Tuesday get it done, because all assignments were due on Sunday. You had to get out a response or a summary, and that's exactly what it was. For me, I would give, welcome class, this has been a great week, we learned the following, this is how it relates to now the new topic that we're going into next week. But let me give you a summary of what I've learned based on your feedback from A, the homework assignment, and B, the project and or quizzes. So I gave at least a summary for them, because yes, Tilt even stated that too for our new generation. Students want to know not only individually, they want to know as a collective group what they're doing.
Yep, they do. They do. Exactly.
Yes, sir. I'm Warren.
Thinking about what you guys talked about in terms of, you said a lot of things. Some things are happening on Monday, some things are happening on Tuesday. Tuan, you talked about assignments opening on this day and closing on this day. I have a feeling one of the hurdles that we all face is keeping students aware of when the deadlines are. And we all have our academic freedoms. We do things in a variety of ways. Of course, my Blackboard shell will have that information someplace. But I was thinking, since now a lot of people are progressing towards 8-week, and this is more, I think, towards, sorry, I forgot your name. Christina. Yeah.
Tina.
I was thinking,
That's fine.
Tina? Oh, thank you. I was thinking more, is there any sort of way that, are you providing instructors who are now building courses some format where this thing is totally visible? And so if a student has taken my class, they shouldn't have to struggle too much to find where the information, deadlines, and things are. So I'm just thinking out loud that if you provide something to all the instructors, so I have at various places where the deadline. So I have like a breakdown of what you're going to be doing this week, for example. I have all the deadlines there. Then when they're actually doing it, I have the deadlines there. Multiple places, but I think it would be frustrating for a student to take my class, it is arranged in a way, and then go to take class with somebody else, and they have a little hard time finding that information. So just thinking out loud, if there's something that you can provide to
So if you have
that,
materials,
you don't have to follow that, but if you can have that information.
Yeah, so if you have materials with due dates, usually in when you're in Ultra, you can sync the course calendar to where they'll be able to see the due dates listed, and it should be on the main course page.
I wanted to show you, this is a face-to-face class.
Let me show you an example of.
No, so I get that. My point was, like instructors who are building the course, they are made aware of to utilize some of those things. So students see consistency from course to course. Of course, it's not going to look exactly the same.
Well, our department does. Our department, we have all of our courses look exactly the same. They all look like this. Whatever the course is, there's a bar up here. They're all into modules with the introduction. Now, this is a 16-week face-to-face course, but every instructor in the business and accounting department they start here. It has all of this information in there. This is let's just go to like a module 3. Here it is. There's my chapter, PowerPoints, podcast, smart book, things like that. This is secret stuff that I have. But one of the things too that I always say to my students is when they go to their calendar, they should be able to see all of their due dates. Now my due dates are always on, well, for this class I think it's on a Tuesday, but let's see if I hit month, they'll be able to see what's there and when it's always due. Here's our spring break, and then when we have classes, I will not be here, so they will not have class, but they can always see exactly what is due for them. And that's for my face-to-face class. To go down into an 8-week class, so this is, I'm trying to think, I don't think I closed it. Yeah, it closes this weekend. So this is my 8-week class. Again, it's the same thing. So, start here, looks exactly the same. But for them, when they can see, here are, I open my classes on Fridays, and they close Sunday, 9 days later. So I tell them right here, this is when everything is due, and again, they can go to their calendar.
Yeah, exactly, that's what I meant. That there's something visible.
Exactly.
They students see that.
Yeah, students can see this. And then here was the other thing. So we had a discussion actually in our department the other day, because for our discussion posts, they're due, initial post is due on Wednesday, and then on Sunday, the responses to each other are due. And we were talking about it, and yes, it's a little bit of work, and I'm going to be doing this for my next 8-week class. But for them, so let's say that, they have a discussion on this Wednesday, I can go in here and add an event, like initial, spelling wrong. So I can do that and say it's due on the 19th, it's an all-day thing, and save it. So then when they go and they look at their month, they're now going to see this discussion there. I don't want to make a grade column for it. And that's the only issue with Blackboard is I wish I could put the dates in without having a grade column. And this is our workaround. So this is the workaround. You were in the meeting. Mm-hmm. This was the workaround I came up with. And I sent a video to everybody. Was that this way at least the students, when they came on, they could see, yes, initial discussions are due that day. So again, and where everybody does it a little differently, but again, I would say for departments, they should think about that as how do our navigation look? If I'm coming to take your classes, do they all look the same? And that's sort of how we're looking at it. This is the new navigation. I started talking about it at the beginning, but this is the new, I gotta go into am I in an online class? I have to go into an online class because it's much more detailed than online.
We gotta watch our time too. So we should make sure, see if there's any more questions from the gallery before we.
Go to 3:30.
We're good, okay, 3:30, okay.
3:30.
We don't have to watch our time, strike that, reverse.
So for my online class, I follow the new navigation, where it's the overview, which I was talking about earlier, readings, whatever else I have in that specific course. I'm a little nutter, so I put little things like this to my students to lead them, like, here's what you're going to do of the assignments that I've created for you, versus a publisher content. There's my assessment that they do to see where they are, and then I always do a summary at the end of what they should have learned. But this is the actual navigation that is out there that Humberto can send, and you just sort of fill it in and so forth. So that's it.
The other thing I wanted to, since Gretchen did a wonderful job and opened the door, I do the same thing, and I think you're right. For everyone, if we do, all of us going into 8 weeks, I agree with Gretchen, have your department talk about if that course or courses that go into 8 weeks that you follow the same module, because I do the same thing for my Math 102 class, however, some of my colleagues may not. Going back to your question in regards to due dates, I do the same thing, if I may use yours.
Yeah.
Each week, in this case, or I should say for each chapter, it gives the dates just like she has here. It also, in this case, they also get a printout, and it's at the top under the welcome that says all important dates.
Yeah.
And it's also highlighted in their calendar in Blackboard. And again, I have to think of all my students. So I have students who do not read it. So in their email, in the orientation email, it has an attachment of important dates, which includes any assignments such as the exams, the projects when they're due, and for my class, for Math 102, they have to do threaded discussions. So it also shows them where it's going to be located in the tab by itself that says projects and discussions, and it has the dates next to it as well too, but it's in their handout that they can see the important dates for this class that I have to remember. I learned that about some years ago because I was taking one of my doctoral classes and it was online, and the professor, phenomenal. Everything was outlined and he said the same thing. So I borrowed it from him and sending out a summary of the syllabus of important dates.
So and that's what I'm going to show you. So this is my syllabus right here. So it's very, very detailed, blah, blah, blah. Nobody wants to read all that stuff. So what I do is in my syllabus, and I also send this to them also in my announcement, is now I have my schedule. And it's printable. And so it tells them all of my information, and there's the weeks, here's what their learning outcomes are made, there's their assignments, here's again the due dates, I give them a little motivational comment, and stuff. But they could print this because that's, again, what I found out from my students is they like to print stuff and stick it on their desk at work and say, okay, it's February 7th through the 16th, here's what I've got to do this week, and so forth. So, yeah, so again, it's just, just putting it together to make it easy for students so that they are not overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to add, no. You said motivation. I actually do the same thing. They get an email as a beginning week motivation, and I go online and just find anything that'll motivate them, saying this is going to be a wonderful week, and then they get a closing one to motivate them that they did a wonderful job for the week.
Right.
I know. I told my students, you get a lot of emails from me, but it's
communication is key.
And you're right, and it is the key, and it's also for all of you when I more practice this in my face-to-face classes, because then again, I teach a lot of college readiness courses. For most of you, it's called developmental courses. So those students are they're first generation, but this is their first time at the college. They're adults. They need that motivation to take our other colleagues' classes. So that's me being their cheerleader and giving that motivation to stay in the class, be engaged. This is what most of my colleagues would do, especially, like I said, my colleague who actually texts them. I said, we all have different ways that we communicate with you. And you want to make sure you stay abreast of that, because what if your instructor, like you have in your syllabus, that you're not going to, on your calendar, that you're not going to be there one day. That's something that I've learned that some students just like to know that, rather than being surprised about it. But things happen, they just happen. But when you said, where can you find it? I think of have it within the calendar for some students, because there are some students out there who do look at the calendar. B, maybe have a summary of it posted in your Blackboard account. C, have it in modules, because I actually do that. I don't call them modules, I call them the chapters that they're going to be looking at. And last but not least, what you want to do is think about exactly the information that you want your students to know. So if it's just the due dates, if it is how the class is going to be designed, create a summary, because you're right. I went to conferences and symposiums that a lot of us say we have so much that we put in our syllabus. There is not one student that's ever joyed to get a 10-page syllabus and read it. Yep. So summarize it. And most students in this case, I would say 90% of them, they want to know the dates. When it's due. Yep.
Thank you for sharing that.
Not a problem. Did anyone have questions?
Did that answer your question? We talked a lot.
I was just talking in general.
All right, awesome.
Just wanted to see what you guys thought.
Yeah.
So in biotechnology program, with the science department, so a few of us teach that. So we're trying to have shelves looking pretty much the same.
Mhm.
So students who take clinical science, for example,
Bless
cell and molecular biology, then they come to me for biochemistry, and because we have things looking exactly the same way, where the due dates are, there's so much at ease.
Oh, it alleviates that learning
struggle
curve.
with that.
Yeah, it alleviates the learning curve. And I do think I would love to see a study on when students go from class to class that doesn't look the same, how often do we lose a student because of the learning curve? Because I do think that is key to it. And I know you talk about academic freedom and everything, but academic freedom is what you teach, not how you navigate. And that's the key. It's what you teach, not how you navigate. You can navigate, everybody can navigate the same way, you just teach it differently, right?
Right.
So.
You're absolutely right. I think that's one of the things that as departments and all of us who are in the room and also online, when we go back and talk to our colleagues in our departments, maybe if we're moving to 8 weeks, I should say maybe we're moving to 8 weeks, have a structure outline of how it's going to be presented online so that you're right, when students go to the next class, for example, that they're not, oh, where am I going to find the information? They know exactly because they've been trained in the first class to look for it. And yeah, and like I said, for college readiness courses that I teach, that's what me. I'm one of those instructors who are teaching those students to go into your classes to know how to do the navigation, A, B, how to be attentive in the class, C, how to be engaging in the class as well too, and D, also how to ask questions because this is their first time, especially when you have first generation students. And then last but not least, how to stay in the course because they get overwhelmed. And sometimes that's going to happen. I know most of us may not do that, but that's part of my pedagogy of teaching in my class and teaching students how to get ready for that. Because retention, in my back of my mind, is important because if we lose them in the beginning, we lose them all. And if you lose them at the beginning of a semester, they're never coming back. However, if you train them to be more engaging in the classroom and be more attentive in the classroom and more understanding to their needs, they're ready to go to your classes, my colleagues out there at virtual land and in the room, to be that same student that was in my class, ready to learn. That's just me.
100%.
All right. Any questions out there in virtual land? Engagement? We talk too much. I'll sit down. Yes, Greg.
I didn't raise my hand, but I do have a question. Thanks for sharing all this. Thanks for sharing all this. I appreciate it. Something that I brought up. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you. Something that I would find very helpful is if other faculty members could maybe share their Blackboard with us so we could get an idea of what works for them and what doesn't. Like you said, Tuan, it's not stealing, it's borrowing, it's paying respect to somebody who does something better than you do. And I was just wondering how everybody else feels about that. I know we can do it across Blackboard to some degree. Like my adjuncts can give me permission to view their shell, but is that something that can be done on a regular basis where I could just ask another faculty member, hey, my students tell me a lot of good things about your class. Could I kind of like creep your Blackboard a little bit just to get some ideas about what you're doing that's really working and engaging the students?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that would not be a problem, Greg. I think there are weird people out there, Greg, and I think there are people who are more than welcome to share the wealth. So I think, yeah. I mean, I know I wouldn't mind sharing. I don't think you'd mind sharing.
I don't mind.
Yeah.
I was just curious about that.
Yeah, and then like with adjuncts, yeah, so we're doing like this semester we're holding, instead of having one adjunct meeting, we're having 3 separate adjunct meetings to walk them through how we want their Blackboard to look. So that when they're doing their face-to-face classes, because the online ones are usually shared, but like your face-to-face, so then we know that our adjuncts face-to-face courses also are looking like the full-time faculty and the online courses.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah, so we're doing like 3 sessions, and then they're coming to them whenever you can come. I'm like, we have to videotape our next one, but like, that, and then they can build it the way they want to build it, and it's gonna look the same. So again, it's really trying to brand that across the board. Again, getting rid of that learning curve for our students.
Oh, you are pioneers. We're like this. We're in the background. I tease for all of you is because some departments lack of communication, lack of sharing. I'm just throwing it out there. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, caller.
Okay.
I like to have fun in my class. Classes should never be bad.
Absolutely. All for fun. So let's say that one faculty member is developing a course, and he or she creates this course. But let's say 4 full-time faculty or 5 or whatever number of faculty members teach that class. So how do we so basically it's the course that one person developed, other persons are going to teach that in 8-week format, because now we are changing things, right? Or
sure.
modifying things. So how do we make sure that course contains the rigor, contains everything that I want? Is there some comment on that?
2 things.
Yes, please.
Communication. Second, communication.
Yeah, because Greg, like in our department, so principles for management, for example, I created the 8-week course. Calvin's going to teach the course. He's not going to touch the course. He will not, he isn't, it has the rigor, it has the course objectives, it is what it is. He isn't like, I think there are some people that are just so into themselves that they're like, well, my stuff's better, blah, 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 which is totally fine, except Calvin and I will talk about it. If Calvin wanted to change an assignment, he would come and talk to me probably about it, and I'd be like, yeah, it's your course, go for it, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care. With the adjuncts though, so Sarah and I teach a lot of the same courses, and so when I develop courses, she and I are literally sitting together, coming up with the assignments together. Back to communication, so that our courses look the same, in the sense even the assignments look the same, because she and I work together to come up with the assignments, projects, whatever the case is, and that's face-to-face and online. So again, what Tuan says, I think it's how people work together and sort of setting that in your department and saying, okay, what do we want it to look like? How we want to make sure our students are getting the rigor. We want to make sure that they're, that if I built this course, you're not going in and tearing it apart, right? Because you put a lot of work into creating a course and a lot of work in coming up with the assignments. So I think it's just also like just being respectful of each other too, and saying, I really like this assignment that you have here. However, I do have this assignment that I normally do. Would you, is it okay if in my course I switch this one out for that one? I just think it's that two-way communication you have with each other as faculty.
You're right. And give another example. I teach Math 116, which is math for elementary educators. In the class, I gave my colleagues, this is what I do, because I have within my department, there's a good number, let's say 3 full-timers, maybe an adjunct because it's assigned to them. Normally, what happened is the adjunct will come to me because they heard from what my design was and try to use that same design. It's because of the fact that, for me, I told them it's more of a methodology course, even though you're teaching mathematics. But it's more of a methodology course in the sense that these students are going into education, if it's early childhood and or elementary. But you want to give them that practice of how to be a teacher in the classroom as well too. So even though it's a math class and they're teaching the mathematics component, within my syllabus and structure, it also has where they're going to be doing what is known, like I said, methodology. The methodology of teaching, how to teach those students X, Y, and Z. So if we're looking at number theory, how to teach number theory in the classroom. So in that, my colleagues in this case, and I'm not putting myself on the pedestal, but my colleagues in this case, the adjuncts will come to me and say, well, I see this in your syllabus. How did you do this? It's all about communication, because they're teaching it maybe for the first time, but they're following what I gave them because they've heard students say, oh no, he gave us this, it helped me in this area. Because that's what they're doing. They're going to be future teachers. And when I thought about designing the class for Math 116, I thought of that. How do we prepare students at this level to be future teachers before they go to the four-year institution? So when I was sitting and talking with my colleagues, I said, I'm not just looking at the material in this class. This class is their foundation. But when they go to their junior, senior year, they should be ready and equipped from us as a two-year institution. So that's why I said it's communication and communication. And I think what's important with the communication that you're sharing, like Gretchen said as well too, you're sharing the ideas and saying, well, I think this will work. Let's try it. Okay, I agree with you, because that's something that will work based on the population of students that we're working with. Oh, you know what, Tuan? Because you taught this class more than I, what do you think? Maybe you should follow this outline of what I'm suggesting. And I did that with an adjunct because he's never taught it before. So he was very nervous. Granted, it's a math class, but it's also an education class. And at this level of being a junior college, we are hired with a master's degree in the area that we're teaching. I also have one of 4 masters, but I have another master in teaching education classes. So that's when I fused it together to say, okay, maybe you should follow this because this is an education class, but it is also a math class. So it's fusing those two together. But then again, not to put myself on the pedestal, but it's all about that communication. And I think that was the most important part of it, because within my class, one of the adjuncts came back and said, Tuan, I never thought of having students do this project of looking at videos and relating the mathematics to children. Yeah, they're going to be future teachers. But it followed the outcome of the course. No one, I shouldn't say no one, but my colleagues who taught it in the past never thought of that. They thought about just teach this. Yeah, but there's other material that you can associate to the learning outcome that students don't find boring in the classroom. Nevertheless, summary en voir, I think A, communication, B, communication, and C, on a good day, collaboration with the communication with your colleagues in this case.
Right. Well, and that's, yeah, it's the collaboration, right?
Mhm.
It isn't like, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I think both of you, I think point is, and I just want to verbalize that you know, let's not develop courses in isolation. Let's talk.
100%.
Absolutely.
100%.
Because
And it's
we're experts in the field. Sorry, Gretchen.
No, you're fine.
We're experts in these fields of our disciplines, but we may come in with these expertise of how to teach the course a little bit better and some additional practices and learns that we've gained over the years to fuse the class to be a little bit better. Because teaching and learning, everyone, is about not just being a teacher or an educator. It's about teaching yourself to be better in the classroom and also teaching your students how to become better students.
Mm-hmm.
The learning part of it is about the collaboration that you learn from others who are doing the same discipline, even if it is here at Triton College, but outside of Triton College as well too, because our students are going over to those institutions. It is also about learning how to be different in this case as well too, because we can't be the same instructor that you came here 20 years ago. That is not the same generation of students that we have. It's about learning to adapt to the different technologies that we have out there, rather than relying on a textbook, because most students are not doing that. It is also about learning to be and reflecting on what you learned as a student and change what your students have learned from in the past. And I say this as an instructor for math, because I love when students come in and say, I hate math. I'm teaching them math is everywhere. You shouldn't hate it. It's not a person. You gave it too much power.
Right.
So stop giving that person that power.
I might use that tonight for homework.
Yeah, math is not a person. You gave it too much power. If you gave it that much power, then they should get paid. They're not getting paid. You are. So stop giving them the power. And in my class, one of the motivations that they have, I do say that, and people laugh at me. I said, and I actually do this for all of you if you can see me. I go into class, and I usually have a shirt that says math. Sometime during the semester, I'll have one this week, which will be tomorrow. it'll say math, and I'll go in there and it's like, I am so mad because, I couldn't do the problem. Math. And they were like, what are you talking about? That's how much power you gave math. You made me a person. So I'm coming to class and showing you I hate it. My students laugh at me and he's like, oh my God, Professor, you're so crazy. Yes, but stop giving it too much power. My job as an educator is to learn from what my students are doing, adapt to it, change it, but also inspire them that they can do it as well too. I told them, you may not love it at the end, and then you may not invite one half to your house and 16th of 35, and you may not have 1/6 sitting at the party, and you may not even flirt with 1/7. But math is not that powerful. It is a tool that you can utilize to help you become better. I'm good.
No, I think I was saying, but we had talked, I don't remember where we talked about it, but we had talked about, to answer a question too, about coming up with a faux Blackboard, like a dummy class.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you were to create an 8-week dummy class, this is what it would kind of look like.
Try it in your sandbox.
Yeah.
Start there.
In the
That's what I
sandbox.
was thinking about.
Yeah.
Start in your sandbox.
Yeah.
Instructors have some.
Yeah.
So again?
Do you have a sandbox?
Yeah, you
I
do.
don't-
You do. If you
I
go,
got plenty of classes I'm gonna follow.
yeah, if you go to, you go to your Blackboard, it's at the thing at the top, and it says something like, shoot, all right, hold on, let me tell you exactly what it is.
There's probably another way, like Greg was asking about sharing material, probably another way that you can share it from there too, Greg.
Yeah, well, like if Greg wanted to borrow mine, I just make him an instructor in my class.
Yeah, that's
so that wouldn't be a big. Okay, so
The
I.
point here is something that was really successful, has all the information. People who are new to this business of creating, transforming, have a guide. That's what my point was.
Yeah, and you're right. Greg stated this before, and I've had it as well too. Some private institutions, and there's also those nonprofit institutions. You're right. They do have a template for for instructors to follow. Greg was right. In some nonprofit institutions, you're already given the course. Your job is to just go in and follow exactly how the course was laid out. So I think in that essence, what you're thinking of, I think it is possible for us to do that as departments, to say, here's a template, let's all follow the same template so that universally all our students are looking at the same way. Could it be something structured as a institution? Well, that goes back to someone in leadership to see if we can structure it as an institution.
My dream one day.
That's your dream one day?
Yes.
Yes.
All courses. Again, academic freedom is one thing, but if they look the same, have the information at the same places, I think that would be a win for everyone.
And you're right. Academic freedom, like Gretchen was saying for all of you, is not the structure of how it looks in Blackboard or any modality. Academic freedom is how you teach it in the classroom and what you want to teach in the classroom. But the structure of it, yeah, that's not academic freedom. That's actually universal to keep us and all our students on the same page so that Snoopy, Heathcliff, and Charlie, and for all of you, those are the names. I never use students' names. But Heathcliff, Snoopy, and Charlie all follow the same model. But if they go to the next class, that's another 8 weeks. They following the same model because they know exactly where the material is going to be found.
I just typed sandbox. I just typed sandbox and it came up.
Okay.
One of the benefits I know for adopting Ultra was the standardization. I don't know, were you
Yeah,
there?
ultra standardized.
How many
education.
people were there when Blackboard Original were there? And
Mhm.
that was just like,
It was a mess.
freedom, but then now it's like, we're kind of all over the place, everybody using different colors, different designs. So at least that was standardized, and I do believe that course template for 16 week can be adopted.
It is. He can. So what did he? I keep going out of my Blackboard. We do not have an 8-week version of it. It'd be nice if we did have an 8-week version of it, because when you take the format, you just have to delete. And so, yeah, you just delete the modules, but it would be super nice if we had an 8-week, because what it does in the actual navigation will say like midterm review, midterm, and then final review, so there's lots of other little modules in there, but if we could for all those OETC people out there, if we could just have him create just a 8-week as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You bring up an excellent point. That is something for leadership.
Right.
No
I think
name.
that shouldn't be difficult, honestly, but I think we can work on something.
Yeah,
I
because
agree, Shelley.
right.
And then they ask for 8 week, well, that's the template we go.
Exactly.
Hybrid, well, that's what we go.
Right, exactly. And I have asked him, so like, and I even did, when I created my 8-week courses, like my new 8-week courses, I then revamped both my 16-week courses over again at the same time. And so when I did that, I asked him, I said, I want 2 shelves. And because I got them in the fall when I was doing my 8-week, and so I did them at the same time, but he sent me a 16-week and he sent me an 8-week shell that now I was able to copy into in spring. So again, it's just asking Humberto for what you want.
Right.
Yep.
And faculty providing input of what you
Yes.
Well, there's some standardization as midterm after 4 weeks.
Yes, well, exactly. And those are things too, like when we talk about standardization, like in mine, I have a spring break module, like it's coming next week. So they're going to this week's going to be over and their next week it says spring break, and so that they know, and providing even back to those dates, just those little cue points for the students, I think is important.
So what's in the spring break module?
It says
Information
go
about
have
school?
fun. No, it says go have fun. Do not think about school, because I will not be thinking about you. No, I'm just kidding.
All right.
Recommendations for users of calendar-related ones that you can watch.
I like that. I do.
And they're not always boring.
Yeah, I like that. Well, we have 2 minutes before the session is over. We want to open it up to anyone online that may have some additional comments, concerns, like I do in class, the finger.
Any questions?
All right.
All right. Anybody have any questions out here?
Not questions, but comments?
Yes.
So
Yes.
I recently attended the Achieving Your Dream conference, and I attended the session on online best practices, and that was presented by the Odessa College from Texas. And things that you have mentioned during the presentations, that's exactly what they were talking about. So they mentioned the reflection activities for the students, and then they collected students' feedback, and it was very positive, and it helped them to learn. They've mentioned videos, and they went beyond inserting just like the beginning of the semester video, but in those videos, because they recognized that a lot of their students struggled with loneliness in the classroom or isolation while doing online learning. So in those videos, yes, they did go over certain parts of the syllabus and the schedule, but also provided some motivational stuff.
Yeah.
So I really like what you have done in your
Thank
schedule about those motivational quotes.
See, I have another one that I added emojis. But what I wanted to also add to what your point was, and we talked about this in the OETC the other day, and this goes back to leadership, I think, administration, is that one of the things that I would say that was feedback from the 8 weeks, I'll send it all to you. You can read it at night if you want, I don't care.
Yeah.
But one of the things they said also was, I wish we could have had at least 1 or 2 online meetings, because I have conference, nobody comes to conference hours. I wish people would realize that they don't come. But if you could set up, like this class, it is up to you on if you want to come or you don't have to come, but at 6 o'clock on the 14th of March, I'm going to be holding an info session, right, as the instructor. I would love to be able to do that, but we can't.
But yes, but you can do something. One catchy phrase that I took out was Feedback Fridays. Okay, the instructors were using like Feedback Fridays, and that's when if the students wanted to connect one-on-one, or the instructors were recording like feedback videos to the students.
Yeah.
So that creates that more personal interaction.
It's not even about the personal, it's the fact that the students want to be able to say, okay, twice a semester, I can get on and I can collaborate with, or I can see my teacher, but they also want to see each other. That's why I kind of do the group things
Right.
and stuff, but it's also that sense of community I think they're looking for.
So another catchphrase
Yeah.
is SPIN, student, peer interaction, and networking. So put some spin into your online courses.
Right, except
Student,
I work in business and
interaction.
spin means how to spin your customer into purchasing your product.
Because that's exactly what students were looking for.
Yeah.
They didn't want to feel like they're the only ones taking
Mhm.
this course.
Right.
They wanted to interact with
Yeah.
each other. And not necessarily just for graded assignments, but just,
Yeah, they just want to interact, yeah.
Well, since you brought it up, I have to say, because I've been dying to say this, I don't have office hours. I have what I call student conference, and then on Friday, it's called open engagement.
There you go, yeah.
So they can come on, and I'm sitting in the classroom virtually and Blackboard. All my students have one link to go to that classroom. So
Do they come?
some of them do,
Oh.
and we just talk about anything. Anything. It does not matter, because they're meeting
I
others
know.
who they're meeting others who are in other classes
Love
that are
you
not
all.
in their class. All right.
I got a kid I got to pick up. He's
Sorry,
texted me
we
3 times.
are 3 minutes over the time. Thank you, everyone.